everyone. Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, here with you today. And I want to talk about being regular. This is a very important topic, and I understand that it is a subject that many people do not want to discuss. It's a private matter and it's embarrassing, and people just don't even want to face the reality of this. But what we do know is the reality is Americans, for the most part, are fairly bound up. When we look statistically at chronic idiopathic constipation, which is very, very common, um, just based off of scientific research and collecting the data from that, we understand that a good 9 to 20% of the US population suffers from chronic idiopathic constipation. So that's an awful lot of people out there who are dealing with irregular bowel movements. And this is a key thing to not just overlook and just kind of accept it and deal with it. You need to make sure that you're making the appropriate changes. So first and foremost, if you fall into that 9 to 20% of folks out there, we need to take a hard look at your diet as well as your fluid intake. So we know that these are two major precipitating factors that can lead to issues with chronic constipation. And remember, this is a normal body function, and we have to make sure that our body has the ability to get rid of all of that waste. Otherwise, we become kind of like a toxic waste dump. And I know it kind of seems odd to think of it that way, but we have to be able to remove those toxins. And if we are not regular, quote unquote, then this can become problematic over time. And so if you have 9 to 20% the US population dealing with constipation, then we know we first have to think, what's a common thread here? The diet. So, a standard American diet certainly is going to be a major player in this. Also, the fact that most Americans walk around fairly dehydrated most of the time. So, we know that changing our diet as well as starting to get higher fluid intake. Now, the fluids that you take in, that really matters because we're not talking about drinking pop or soda, depending upon where in the country you're from. So, we're not talking about drinking sugar beverages, the juices and sodas. No, that's not a means for getting in proper fluid. We're talking about water. Yes, water. Now, if you are not a fan of water, you should become one. But if you are not one, then there's different ways that you can still get that water in. Add in a little green tea, TX extract into your water, or the white tea. Heck, you can go ahead and put in a scoop of oranges, for example. But we have to make sure that we are staying well hydrated. And then we have to make sure that we're getting in appropriate fiber. This is kind of that key player. We know that the average American probably gets roughly 5 to 10 grams of fiber per day when we should be getting at least 30 grams. So now don't rush out and tomorrow try to do 30 grams of fiber into your diet because your body may not be too happy with you. You want to slowly introduce the higher fiber foods into your daily dietary intake. So this is really important. So where do we get dietary fiber from? Fruits and vegetables. And what do we know about fruits and vegetables? Well, we know from the National Health Nutrition Survey that only 75% of Americans get enough fruit every single day, and that's 1 to 2 cups. And an alarming 87% of Americans are not getting enough vegetables per day, which is 2 to 3 cups. So, right there explains why people are walking around in this chronic state of constipation. So, not enough fluids, or the right types of fluids, and obviously not enough fruits and vegetables. Now, there's other sources that we can get our fiber from. We can look at seeds and nuts, for example, also a very good option for you. So we want to adhere to a Mediterranean style diet. Then we're going to be getting adequate amounts of fiber throughout our day. And fiber is so important, not just for maintaining regularity of bowel movements. We have to think about what fiber does when we think about our cholesterol, the maintenance of our blood sugar levels, for example. The higher fiber foods that we have, the less likely we're going to have these spikes in blood glucose. So just adhere to a Mediterranean diet, really a good option. Now, there's other ways that can create chronic constipation. We can look at certain medications. We know that there are certain antihypertensive drugs, such as calcium channel blockers, for example, that can potentially create a situation where you are more prone to chronic constipation. Certain classes of antidepressants, for example, antacids, this is a big one. So if people are, chewing on antacids all the time because they have acid reflux, probably because of their standard American diet, this is also another way that we can drive up the likelihood of constipation. So these are all things that we certainly want to be cognizant of. You can even look at certain NSAIDs. So if someone's continuously taking over the counter medications for pain, then that's another area. Now, we certainly know that the opioids do this, and that's kind of an interesting thing. Opioids have always been known to create constipation. So when someone is put on a prescription opioid pain pill, um, and they are on it for too long, which we know is certainly an issue, then that drives up chronic constipation to the lengths that they now have a medication to combat the chronic constipation brought on by your opioid. I know. It's kind of a crazy cycle. So instead of trying to figure out the pain and fixing the pain, instead they keep you on this really strong pain medication, then you get all bound up, then they have to give you something to try and unbind you. So that's neither here nor there. I want to talk about colon HX. This is another thing that you can incorporate into your daily routine. Now, this is a really cool blend. It has psyllium fiber, which is going to be probably the most well known fiber out there when it comes to regularity. It is perfect when we think about our GI system. And the reason why I say perfect is because we know one thing about psyllium. We know that psyllium fiber, out of all of the different fibers that are out there, has this really amazing ability to drive up the body's production of short chain fatty acids. Now, why does that matter? Well, because we look at what those short chain fatty acids are actually doing. We look at things like butyrate and acetate and propionate. Those fatty acids help our body in terms of naturally easing inflammation. And so they work really lovely with our microbiome. So these short chain fatty acids that we derive in high amounts from the psyllium help ease inflammation throughout the GI. So that's a bonus. Now, in the colon HX, you're getting the psyllium fiber, but you are also getting bentonite clay. Why is that important? Because we know that bentonite clay does a lovely job going around and finding little particles of toxins throughout the body. Well, where do we know that toxins can build up? Well, certainly when we think about our waste product. So we have in the colon HX psyllium plus the bentonite clay. So it's a really great formulation. Now, how do you take it? Most of the time, people will take a scoop with a full glass of water at bedtime. Now, there's different ways that you can use it. You can certainly talk to one of our nutritional experts and ask, how should I take this? When should I take it? How long should I be taking this for? Is this something I need to be on every day? Or is this something that maybe I use for a couple of weeks every other month? So, this is something you definitely want to ask our nutritional experts about. Now, the other key thing that you want to make sure that you have in your supplement arsenal when it comes to constipation is magnesium. We must include magnesium, and I always advise magnesium citrate. The citrated form, so when you take elemental magnesium and you bind it to citrate, it has a really nice ability to absorb real quick into the GI. And so this is key because we want to create an environment in which magnesium is working the way we need it to, which is helping for the relaxation of the smooth muscle within the GI tract. So, this is why magnesium can be very, very beneficial. Most people have probably seen the liquid magnesiums that you can get that are targeted towards chronic constipation. But if you're taking magnesium citrate every single day, if you are more prone to being constipated and you start to incorporate magnesium citrate as part of your daily routine, this should really be helpful. Now, how much should you take? I always say this is based on bowel tolerance. What does that mean? What is bowel tolerance? It means you take enough that your body is accepting of without creating the opposite effect. So we don't want to go from a state of chronic constipation to we're running off to the bathroom because now we have loose stools. So you kind of just base that. I always say with magnesium citrate, low and slow. It's kind of like when you're incorporating and making a major dietary change, You want to slowly start to introduce those fibers. Same thing with magnesium. You want to go low and slow with that magnesium. Now, also remember probiotics. We have to make sure that our microbiome is filled with good, healthy bacteria that work in sync with your psyllium, work alongside of that magnesium. So we have many different things that are very easy to accomplish. Increase our fluid intake. First and foremost, start to have more fiber in our diet. Adherence to a Mediterranean style diet is your best choice. Looking at the colon HX, which is that blend with psyllium and bentonite clay. Magnesium citrate becomes your friend, as well as probiotic HX. So that's just kind of my 1-2 punch for tips for dealing with constipation. We know a lot of people out there are dealing with this. So make sure you reach out to one of our healthcare experts to ask for the specifics on what your needs may be. And I will be back with you in a few more days to talk about more wonderful formulations from Invite Health. Thank you.